On to the next table, and shortly after taking my seat, I pick up pocket aces under the gun. I open to 15. Under the gun +1 calls, the button calls, the small blind calls, and the big blind calls. Everyone's trying to ruin my
Brad
day.
Owen, world-class poker video blogger, excellent content creator. He's pretty good at poker too. He raises it up with the pocket aces to $15 at 2-5 no limit hold'em. This may seem like a very, very standard play, and it is. However, one thing I will say is that if you are playing in a 2-5 no limit hold'em game where people are regularly making it $20 or $25 and getting a decent amount of action, which is very often the case in smallish stakes live no limit hold'em cash games, you might as well just make it a little bit bigger, like 20 or 25. I do fully realize that in some games, if you make it 20 or 25, that will make alarm bells go off in your opponent's heads because maybe that's a bigger than normal raise. But you all, in the comment section down below, tell me regularly, if I raise to $15, everybody calls. And if I raise to 25, everybody calls. Okay, then make it bigger with your aces and get maximum value. That said, I would have made it $15 for the most part if people had any clue how I played, which is what Brad does. He gets a bunch of callers. Let's go to the flop.
It's going to be tough though, because we flop what is referred to as quads. That's right, not just clickbait. It actually happened. Wouldn't do you like that. Checks to me. I want to get maximum value, so I bet 300. This bet looks weird, but it's designed to look weird. There's no other way to get paid when you flop a hand this strong. You have to hope one of your opponents either doesn't believe you and calls light or drilled the flop too. With 4 other players involved, there's a good chance I'm up against somebody who wants to get on the vlog and is going to call light or who has pocket 5s.
The flop comes ace, ace, 5, giving Brad quads. And then he decides to bet $300 into the $75 pot. Did I just say he was good at poker? What I want to know is what do you think about this strategy? Do you think it's a good bet size? Does it have any merit whatsoever? Or is Brad crazy? Take a second, think about it, and let me know in the comment section below, down there, what you think of this bet. And while you're down there, click the like and subscribe button, please.
Just kidding. Sorry to waste a lot of you guys' time. That didn't really happen. I did flop quads, but I checked the flop. So did everybody else.
Brad was bluffing us. Did anyone believe he would actually bet $300 on this flop? I honestly didn't. I thought like, no. Maybe somebody turned their hand over by accident and they showed pocket 5s, maybe. But no. Betting 300 would be atrociously bad for all the obvious reasons. That said, I think maybe betting small is okay, like $20, because while it's kind of hard for anyone to have anything, if they have a pocket pair, they're going to call, and I think that's reasonable. That said, checking's fine too, because your opponents are drawing dead, right? And when your opponents are all drawing dead, you want to do everything you possibly can to let them catch up. Like imagine someone has pocket 7s and the turn's a 7. Well, now they're just going to pay you a ton. Or imagine someone has a 5 and the turn's a 5. They're going to pay you a lot. Or if somebody has queen jack and the turn's a jack, they're going to pay you some. So I like checking, and I think that definitely is the ideal play. Normally in small stakes cash games, when you have a very strong hand, you don't really want to be slow playing just because you want to get money in the pot. But when you flop 4 of a kind, and they're 4 of a kind like aces, kings, or queens, it's just really hard for anyone to have anything. And if there's ever a spot to check with the nuts, this is it, because it's not vulnerable out at all to being outdrawn. What a lot of people do wrong is they flop something like 3 of a kind. Say the flop comes 8, 7, 4, and they have pocket 4s. They check that, thinking, oh, it's the super nuts. And it is very strong. The problem is on 8, 7, 4, you're going to get outdrawn by straights sometimes, and that's not ideal. You want to make sure when you slow play, your hand is not vulnerable to being outdrawn much at all, especially in multi-way pots. Anyway, check. Let's head to the turn.
The turn is a jack. There are 2 clubs out there now. Checks to me again. This time I bet 15. It's a tiny bet. I'm hoping to get calls from really weak hands or perhaps induce a bluff. Under the gun +1 calls and the small blind calls as well. Not sure what their plan is for the river, but I'm looking forward to seeing it.
The turn is the jack of clubs. Brad bets tiny and then gets 2 callers, which is good. I think on the jack of clubs turn, I would actually bet a little bit bigger, because on the jack of clubs turn, now some of the opponents are going to have flush draws, straight draws, or a jack, and I don't think that's going to fold to a $25 bet. I know this sounds a little bit nitpicky to say pre-flop. Brad, make it an extra $5 or $10. And on the turn, make an extra $5 or $10. But I do think that will just extract a little bit more value. And I know $10 may not sound like a lot, but it's 2 big blinds, which is a real amount. if you imagine you're playing in these cash games and you think you're winning 10 big blinds per hour or 15 big blinds per hour, if you're really, really good, getting an extra 2 or 4 big blinds on your playable hands really does add up to a lot of big blinds in the long run. So while I love the bet on the turn, I think I would have gone just a little bit bigger when the turn puts up a lot of draws, or the turn should logically connect with a lot of the opponent's pre-flop calling ranges like King Jack, Queen Jack, Jack 10, Jack 9, right? So I would have gone a little bit bigger. Let's head to the river.
Dealer puts out another 5, which is a great card. Small blind checks. I bet 50.
The river is the 5 of spades, which is an interesting card because now if someone does have a 5, they'll probably pay off against any reasonable bet. And if someone has a jack, they may just find a call too. So Brad does go for a $50 bet into the $120 pot. I think I'd probably go just a little bit bigger. Again, maybe I'm greedy. Something else you can let me know in the comments section. Do you think someone's going to fold a jack for 75 compared to 50? Because that's what we're trying to get called by, right? If you think someone's going to fold out a jack for $25 more, then the $50 bet's probably going to be better because the opponents are going to have a lot of jacks, especially when it goes bet and call on the turn. I don't think anyone's going to fold a 5 to a $75 bet at all. So I think we can, to some extent, ignore that. So the real question is, how much will they pay with the jack? And I gotta think people will pay a little bit more than 50 with the jack. Maybe 60 is the right number. Maybe 75 is the right number. For some opponents, 120 is going to be the right number. It's always a guessing game as to how much your opponents will call. Usually I think about what I think the most someone will call with, and then I lower my bet just a little bit when I'm trying to play maximally exploitative poker, which is very often what you want to be doing in live cash games. And I think the most someone's going to call with the jack is like 100 or 90. So I'd go to just a little bit smaller than that. And I think that's going to be a pretty good size, just to, again, extract a little bit more value, which will add up to a lot in the long run. That said, if you bet 50, anyone with a jack's going to call. So maybe my initial estimate of 100 was a little bit high. Maybe the right number is 70, and then you lower it a little bit from there. Anyway, Brad goes 50. Let's see if he gets some action.
Under the gun +1, surprisingly raises to 125. The small blind folds, it's back on me. I'm hoping that somehow the opponent has a 5th ace. I re-raise to 300. The opponent folds. I table my hand. Eventually, the player reveals that he had 6-5 of hearts. We end up getting a great run out and win close to the max.
Somehow, one of the opponents with a 5 opts to put in a raise. Brad, of course, re-raises. And then the 5 makes what it thinks is a big fold. I don't think the 5 should have raised to begin with. This is an annoying spot, but you have to realize an ace is going to slow play a lot on the flop from Brad. And it's going to bet small on the turn a decent chunk of the time, and it's going to bet the river. And this is a spot where the 5, for the bad full house, just had an easy call on the river. Something a lot of cash game players do, what I think is incorrectly, what I think they do, I think they play incorrectly in spots where they have a hand that's very high up on the hand ranking chart, but if you raise and get called, you're probably going to be beat. And this is a spot where if Brad did bet this river with a jack, or let's even say pocket kings, and you check raise him or raise him, he's just going to fold because it's so easy to be against an ace or a 5, right? So for that reason, I don't think you can get away with raising a 5 on the river. The opponent does. They get punished by a re-raise. They have to let it go. It's an easy fold, by the way, with a 5. And Brad scoop loops a nice pot with the ace and the ace and the ace and the ace. That's it for today. Good luck in your games. I hope you flop quads in your next session, and I'll talk to you next time.